Have you ever tried to argue with a man who claims he's being logical, but all of his logic is usually...
Logic and emotions are not coincided at all. In fact, if you were to look at logic in its purest form, there would be absolutely no empathy and no emotion.
Except for the fact that empathy is not an emotion, it's a skill. Now sure, some psych person might chime in and tell me that empathy is technically an emotion, but at the very least it's not an emotion in the way that you are describing emotions as entirely separate from logic. Because you're right to say that emotions are not connected to logic. If someone were to slap me in the face and I got upset, that's not because I logically thought about their actions and decided I should get upset, that's just because I had an immediate emotional reaction. However, at its core, empathy is not about a reaction of emotion. Empathy is about understanding emotion. Now, there are two different types of empathy. The first is called emotional empathy, which is when you understand how someone else is feeling because you are feeling the exact same way. For instance, if you're, say, watching The Iron Giant and you start crying at the end of the film, you could say that you emotionally empathize with the boy on screen because you are sad for the exact same reasons that he is sad. But most of the time when people talk about having empathy, they're talking about cognitive empathy, which is when you fundamentally understand why a person is feeling the way they are. And not only is that absolutely based in logic, it's a logic that is very often more difficult than what we think of as traditional logic because it forces you to think logically about why someone else might not be thinking logically. Simple example would be if someone were to slap you across the face, I can logically understand that that would upset you, despite the fact that your reaction is not one based in logic. Yours is one just based in emotion. And if you're having an emotional argument with someone and you're unable to exhibit any empathy, then you are not thinking logically, because that means you fundamentally do not understand why they are feeling the way they are. I hate to say the most millennial thing on the planet, but this did make me think of an episode of The Office, which showcased the necessity of empathy in order to reach a logical solution. The episode in question is when people are worried that Dunder Mifflin is about to go under, and so all the employees at the office are incredibly stressed that they might lose their job. And so what does Michael, the manager, do in order to reassure everybody and alleviate the situation? Well, he starts playing a murder mystery game set in Savannah with the entire office, where one among them is the killer. Now, Jim, the co-manager, is understandably very annoyed by this, and so he is logically asking Michael why he's having the entire office play this stupid game on a day when they are incredibly stressed about losing their livelihoods. And it all culminates in this scene.
Michael, can I talk to you in your office?
No, Michael, here. My name is...
Caleb! Today, of all days...
Just shut up! They need this game, Jim. Let us have this stupid little game, all right?
The issue was, Jim's logic did not contain any empathy, and so unlike Michael, he was not able to understand why the employees actually needed this game as a way to cope with this stress. I bring up the classic example of a girlfriend complaining to a boyfriend who's giving her logical solutions that she does not want as an example of someone using logic when they do not want it, but I actually think this is a fundamental misunderstanding as to why this disagreement occurs. Not that women don't want solutions to their problems. Who wouldn't want to have their problems solved? The issue is, before anything else, they would like to know that they are not crazy for being upset in the first place. Very often when people get upset, you end up being filled with these contradictory emotions where you feel almost ashamed that you're upset at all. You know, you see people crying, wiping their own tears, saying, I shouldn't be crying, this is stupid, what's wrong with me? And so the same thing is happening here. So she opens up to her boyfriend because she's hoping to receive some kind of empathy. She wants to hear some sort of validation. Just I understand why you were upset. You are not wrong for being upset, and you are not crazy. And in my personal experience, after they are reassured of their own emotions, they will be just as open to take any logical advice that you would give them. And most of the time, they'll be able to come up with it on their own because it's not as if we're logical savants coming up with solutions that no one else would ever think of. Very often, men will respond to the scenario by saying something along the lines of, well, why don't you just not talk to her if it upsets you this much? And it's the if this upsets you this much that is not only lacking empathy, it's actually the exact antithesis to empathy, because it's almost as if they're saying, well, I don't understand why you're upset, but if you are being vulnerable and opening up to a person that you hope cares about you, the very last thing you want to hear is that they do not understand why you are upset. Very often that will be a bigger slap in the face than whatever it was that was upsetting them originally. Now, if you're having trouble understanding why someone wouldn't want to hear a logical solution just because they haven't been validated yet, we can think about this logically, aka with empathy. It could be very difficult to focus on solving a problem that you are still not fully convinced is even real yet, especially if, as far as you can tell, you're the only person who even thinks it's a problem at all. And women are very good at comforting other women because they will immediately validate these emotions. They'll go, oh my God, what an asshole, making the person who's upset say, right? Thank you. And then after that, they will talk about next steps. It's not as if they just stop right there. And empathy, like any other skill, is a skill that you can learn. Some people might be naturally better at it than others, but it's something you can learn nonetheless.
What's the news?
Nothing yet.
Well, I guess that's not...
Well, there is some bad news. There has been another murder. A murder, you say? I do declare.